Hey everyone, welcome back to Levi's Locks. This is the series turning $100 into $1,000 where we are working to 10x what we start with. And unfortunately this week was rough. Went 1-4, gotta own it when you have a bad week, and I did. But hey, we're looking forward. We're going to turn it around. This week will be a little bit different just because the props come out later in the week. We've decided to put out the lines only video first, and then the props and the degenerate designation will come out in a shorts only video a little later in the week. Now, we're looking for this week's picks to do better, and we're going to start with a favorite of mine for pick one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Broncos -7. And I know it's a big line, and I don't love taking big lines, but Bo Nix has had real problems scoring. Just a real problem getting in the end zone. Not to mention that run game hasn't done well either, so he's not getting support, and you don't have to worry about that becoming a problem. The Buccaneers did well, even beat up against the Lions. Their defense really held up surprisingly well. Got to think that they're going to hold up against the Broncos. On the other side, they managed to score 20 points with missing all kinds of players for the Buccaneers. And when you include Gadecki being out and Aiden Hutchinson getting 5 sacks, that's Aiden Hutchinson getting 5 sacks. You just don't see that happening again against the Broncos. Gadecki's going to be back, the right tackle. They'll be healthy. They'll go back to scoring the way that they normally do. They've got a lot of offensive options, and they're going to get a lot of chances to score on this defense because Bo Nix and the Broncos offense does not move the ball real well, which means again and again they're going to get 3 and outs or 1 first down and put it back in the hands of Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense, getting crack after crack after crack at this Broncos defense, and they will crack it open. They would have put up points. It might be 22, might be 24, might be 25, but the Broncos are going to struggle to score at all, and therefore I do feel comfortable even with the 7 score lock. Moving on to pick number 2, going to go with the hometown Cleveland Browns. 6-point favorites. Again, a pretty big line, but there's a reason for it. The Giants are terrible, and quite frankly, they are finding ways to lose. This past week against the Commanders, they scored 3 touchdowns and did not give up a single touchdown and lost for the first time in NFL history. They're just that kind of team having that kind of season. And ultimately, the Browns defense had a big bounce back this past week. You expect them to come out and play well. Might even have a pick 6 with Daniel Jones throwing the ball. And when you look at that offense, they look a little bit better, a little bit sharper. You hope that some of those receivers catch those balls this time around and they produce a little bit more. Even though it is a big line, again, the Giants are going to struggle to score. And as such, I take the Browns, even with being 6-point favorites. Again, they're bigger lines this week, but there's a good reason why. And in this case, with the Giants and the way they're playing, I'm going to take the Browns. Pick number 4 is Chiefs versus Falcons. I'm going to take the Chiefs as the 4.5-point favorites. At the end of the day, the Falcons pulled out a big one last week. That's phenomenal. It also took the Eagles really messing that up on several different levels and, quite frankly, running the worst prevent defense I've seen in a long time. They still look a little off. They don't have it quite right yet. The run game's getting going again, but the passing game has its moments and some moments where it's not so great. And the Chiefs do have a good defense. They do not have a Falcon secondary. They have a good secondary. They're going to pressure you. They're going to make it uncomfortable. Spagnuolo knows what he's doing. It's not going to be a great game for them. So even though they are missing Pacheco, and admittedly that is a bit of a worry against really good teams, the Falcons at this moment, at this point in time, are not yet a really good team, and the Chiefs are. So they will come out with a victory, and I expect them to come out with a pretty decisive victory, but certainly enough to cover the 4.5-point line. For pick number 3, I'm going to pick the Steelers over the Chargers. And some people are high on the Chargers and Harbaugh, and I get it. He's a great coach. I think he's got a lot of ways to go, though, however, because he just doesn't have the talented receiver to do this. This passing game is not what you want it to be. And you really saw that last week against the Panthers, because the Panthers do not have a good defense. We know that. Derek Carr lit them up, and the passing game did not look good this past week. They ran the ball well, but when you're not passing well against the Panthers, that just gives me reason to believe this passing game is just struggling, period, end of story. The Steelers are going to line up 8 in a box and say, pass the ball. They're a good defense. They can stuff the run. They can make you one-dimensional, and it doesn't look like the Chargers know what to do when that happens. Therefore, the Steelers are going to go through another week where Justin Fields leads them to win via 1 touchdown, a couple runs, a couple plays here and there, and a bunch of field goals. It's not going to look pretty, but just like with 1 and 2, they're going to get the win again. And since it's just a 2-point line, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Steelers. And lastly, for pick number 5, I'm actually going to go on the biggest line I have ever bet on, maybe ever. I almost never go above 7 points, but I'm actually going to take the Bengals as 8-point favorites against the Commanders. And I don't love 8. But I love the Bengals this week. They look a lot better last week. They look back to doing what Bengals do, which is just scoring a lot. They made mistakes, but they were certainly looking a lot better in Arrowhead on the road. They just look good against the Chiefs. At the end of the day, they're going to go play the Commanders, and the Commanders are bad, and their defense is really, 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 really bad. And therefore, the Bengals are just going to have a good time with it. They're going to push it, and they're going to really push it because they are 0-2 at the end of the day, even though they look better last week. So you know they're going to want to put a hurt on these Commanders. We saw week 1 that when a good offense is wanting to put the hurt on them, they can put the hurt on the Commanders. So at the end of the day, Bengals are going to come out. The Bengals are going to smoke them, and they're going to take this win. Hopefully, we'll go 5-0 this week to make up for last week. And I'll see you next week after this one, hopefully in a more jubilant mood.